The next item of business is a statement by Shirley and Somerville on update on Scotland's social security benefits. The Cabinet Secretary questions at the end of her statement, so there should be no interventions or interruption. I call on Shirley and Somerville. Cabinet Secretary, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In April, I informed Parliament about the areas of the social security programme that had to be put on hold because of COVID-19 and said I would update the Chamber again when we had assessed the impact of the pandemic further. Clearly, that impact is significant and continuing in all areas of life, and social security is no different. Therefore, today I want to set out my expectations for when we will be able to deliver the first of our Scottish Disability Assistance benefits. To provide some context about the considerable impact of the pandemic on social security, face-to-face user research and testing had to be paused. Around 60 social security staff were redeployed to support the COVID response elsewhere in government, and of course all staff had to work from home. This impacted on frontline staff at Social Security Scotland in particular, but also programme staff who had to try and replicate the face-to-face agile methodologies to build their future benefits while working remotely. But the impact on our delivery partners was and is still even more marked. Health and social care professionals, whose expertise we need to deliver disability and carer benefits, have been rightly redeployed to the front line. Local authorities are focused on supporting people during this incredibly difficult time, from keeping schools open to providing our new self-isolation support grant. And the Department for Work and Pensions, whose partnership is imperative to our work, has had to divert resources, understandably, to respond to unprecedented demand for universal credit as the economic impact of the pandemic hit. I don't want to dwell on this, Presiding Officer, because COVID-19 affects us all, and across society, the way we live, work and socialise has utterly changed, but it is an important context. And despite the impact on future social security benefits, I am very proud of what this government and social security have achieved this year. We've continued to deliver and pay our benefits to people. Social Security Scotland is forecast to spend £111 million this financial year to support 262,000 people. We've introduced 3 new benefits, and we've provided a raft of increased support to people to mitigate the pressures the pandemic has caused. We've supported people through significantly increasing the Scottish Welfare Fund and discretionary housing payments, as well as other housing support. We paid an additional coronavirus carers allowance supplement in June, providing carers in Scotland with up to £690 more this year than elsewhere in the UK. And we've introduced that brand new form of support to respond to the pandemic through our £500 self-isolation support grant for low-income workers. Over the past 4 months, we've also introduced 3 brand new benefits to support the people of Scotland. Our Job Start payment helps young people returning to the workplace, and from next week our Child Winter Heating Assistance will help heat the homes of severely disabled children. And through our prioritisation of the game-changing Scottish Child Payment, we were able to open to applications for children under 6 last week. This payment has never been more needed, and we have delivered it at speed, unprecedented in the UK, from under 18 months from announcement to delivery. That is what we have achieved, and I want to now give Parliament clarity on when, in my judgment, we will be able to deliver some of the benefits whose introduction the pandemic has delayed. I am mindful of the continued uncertainty of COVID-19. While our own resources have now returned to near pre-pandemic levels, the same is not true for our delivery partners, who are still heavily impacted in key areas. Accordingly, work to replan our timetable is still continuing, but I am able to tell Parliament about the decisions made so far. My ambition remains to roll out the Scottish Child Payment to under-16s by the end of 2022, as we recognise the profound positive impact it will have on tackling child poverty. It could support up to 500,000 children with an annual investment of £184 million. But as I have consistently made clear, in order to deliver the payment on time, we are absolutely dependent on the DWP giving us the data we need on 6 to 16-year-old children. We cannot proceed without it, and currently do not have clarity on that point. Conversations continue, and just last week I spoke to the UK Government's Minister for Disabled People and emphasised once again the crucial importance of DWP support in delivering this payment, and I will continue to make that case. Turning now to disability benefits. Had it not been for the pandemic, I believe that we would by now have been delivering the child disability payment, with adult disability payment on course to launch early next year in line with our previous plans. So it was hugely disappointing for me personally when in April I announced that COVID-19 would delay these new benefits. But I know that that disappointment is nothing when compared to that felt by disabled people who are rightly looking forward to a better service based on dignity, fairness and respect. We have therefore worked hard over the summer in partnership with the DWP and, importantly, the health and social care professionals we will need to determine when it might be possible to introduce these two benefits. My decision, which DWP have agreed to support, is that we will introduce child disability payment from summer next year. There will be an initial pilot to test our systems and processes, followed by full national rollout in the autumn. The following year, adult disability payment will replace the DWP's personal independence payment, again beginning with a pilot in spring 2022, with full rollout by summer. The first Scottish clients who currently receive child DLA and PIP will begin to transfer across to Social Security Scotland as soon as the new benefits are rolled out nationally. Whilst it remains a disappointment to me that the pandemic has led to this inevitable change in our programme, it has not and does not stop the work we are doing. Members will have seen the set of policy papers we published recently on disability benefits, showing how the new service will look from when people apply through to how decisions are taken and what support can be provided. Work has continued to ensure that we have respect, dignity and fairness built into how our disability benefits will look, feel and support people. And I'm grateful to our stakeholders and experienced panel members for helping us make those values a reality. The work on the necessary legislation is also well underway. The Scottish Commission on Social Security is currently scrutinising our child disability payment regulations, and we will consult shortly on the regulations for adult disability payment. Turning to the remaining devolved benefits, which I discussed last week with the Minister for Disabled People. Now that our respective officials have the capacity to do so, we reaffirmed our commitment to take forward the necessary detailed planning work on these benefits, having prioritised reaching an agreement on child and adult disability payment over the last few months. And I want to thank the DWP for their continued support in that work of replanning. This includes carers' assistance, the other disability benefits and our winter benefits. People will continue to get their payments under agency agreements with the DWP in the meantime, and I will, of course, keep Parliament updated. As with disability benefits, we will also progress the important policy work necessary. We will consult early next year on the strategic direction for carers' assistance in Scotland to ensure that both carers' allowance and the new carers' additional child payment will meet the needs of Scottish carers. It remains my intention and my ambition to launch all our benefits and complete the work of case transfer by 2025 in line with the timetable I announced last year. Though, as I have always said, we will not do so if this would put people's payments at risk. I've listened to the recent advice from the Disability and Carer Benefits Expert Advisory Group that our wish to transfer people's cases as soon as possible and, I quote, must not jeopardise the safe and secure transfer process. I will always prioritise making sure that people get their payments that they are entitled to in these troubled times above all. Presiding Officer, I know that the changes to our timetable and the continuing uncertainty will be disappointing to many people. Social security is just one of many areas of our lives that the all-pervasive impact of the pandemic has thrown off course. Yet as we remain focused on delivering a system that looks and feels substantially different, founded on dignity, fairness and respect, I'm confident about what we can and what we will achieve despite the difficulties caused by COVID-19. This time next week, families of severely disabled children will begin receiving an additional £200 towards their heating costs. In 3 months' time, Scottish Child Payment will start to be paid to families of children under 6. And this time next year, disabled children across Scotland will be getting support from our new child disability payment, and we will have begun work on the transferring of existing Scottish clients safely and securely from DWP to Social Security Scotland. The following year, we will replace PIP and, with UK Government cooperation, roll out the Scottish Child Payment to under-16s and help lift 30,000 children out of poverty. Presiding Officer, there is no denying that we are living through unprecedented and difficult times. But despite this adversity and in partnership with the people of Scotland, we are continuing to change lives for the better through our new social security system.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. The Cabinet Secretary will now take questions on the issues raised in her statement. I have only 20 minutes or so for questions. There is no time in hand. I call Rachel Hamilton, followed by Pauline McNeill.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for prior sight of her statement, and can I also take this opportunity to thank the Social Security Scotland staff for their support during the COVID efforts. The financial hardship we've seen over the past 7 months due to the pandemic has been unprecedented, as the Cabinet Secretary said. Will she commit to backdating the Scottish Child Payment so that families of the children that are eligible now but turn 6 before February are not excluded? And what estimations has the Scottish Government made as to how many children will be affected by turning 6 before the end of 2022? And what alternative support will be in place should they decide not to backdate that payment? Thank you.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, we have looked very seriously, as I hope the member would expect, to see whether it is possible to backdate the Scottish Child Payment. And it isn't possible to do that because the system was not designed to allow that to happen. And that was a process that was put in place many months ago when the Scottish Child Payment was being looked at. And the reason for designing the Scottish Child Payment the way that it was to build on the Best Starting Breast Cancer Food, and that allowed us to bring in the Scottish Child Payment quicker. To backdate it would require Social Security Scotland staff to analyse every single application for every single week that an application came in for. And that level of administrative burden would actually, ironically enough, put back the start date for the Scottish Child Payment. So because the system was designed to be brought in at speed, and it has been brought in at speed, that does mean that there are limitations to how it can be used. But we have done, of course, a great deal to support people, including low-income families, during the COVID pandemic. That includes increasing the Scottish Welfare Fund, discretionary housing payments, and, of course, the assistance for free school meals.
Pauline McNeill.
Scottish Labour recognises that COVID-19 has set back Scotland's social security system, and I'd also like to add our thanks to the workforce for what they've done to keep the system going in the last 9 months. Claims have shot up 5-fold during this period, so it is unfortunate as more people would have benefited from face-to-face contact and a new approach to social security. So we welcome the Cabinet Secretary's announcements on the Job Start Payment and child disability winter heating allowances, and it's a shame for those families that will be disappointed that we can't get more access to those benefits sooner. I would like to ask the Cabinet Secretary in relation to the new adult disability payment. What progress has been made to implement lifelong awards for those with a lifelong condition which is unlikely to change? Because I think there was agreement during the passage of the bill that this is ideally where we'd like to be, in order that those people with disabilities that have a lifelong condition could restore their dignity and improve their quality of life. So anything the Cabinet Secretary can tell me to ensure that we're on target in some way to make sure that we can get to that stage, at least by the next Parliament.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, again, this is something that's been given very active consideration, and I continue to look at it. Of course, when we have the adult disability payment, we will have reviews from 5 to 10 years, and those with disabilities or conditions that are very unlikely to change will be given a review date accordingly. And very importantly, they will be very light touch reviews, and that may be as simple as a review to check the agency sends out, for example, correspondence and gets reassurance from the client that their condition has not improved, and therefore that may be all the information that's needed as a part of the light touch review. That light touch review process is obviously something we're working with stakeholders and users to make sure that we get right, and that when we mean light touch, we genuinely mean light touch. We get the information that we need to make a decision, but it's done in a way that causes the minimum stress and difficulty for the client. But it is something I will keep under consideration.
I have 11 members wishing to ask questions, so I want short questions and answers, please, to match. Shona Robertson, followed by Alison Johnson.
Can the Cabinet Secretary say how the pandemic has impacted on recruitment of staff in the agency to date, And what does the announcement today mean for future recruitment in Dundee?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the Scottish Government temporarily stopped all recruitment activity from March to July to protect the safety of the candidates and redirect staff to respond to the pandemic. And that, of course, did have a major impact on agency recruitment. For example, the child disability payment, the first clients were actually due to be interviewed on what was the first day of lockdown, and over 500 interviews had to be postponed. But we are now getting back on track and have been able to make offers to some successful candidates. We've obviously had to change the way that the agency works, and much of the training and recruitment is obviously now done virtually. Over 400 new colleagues have joined the agency since the introduction of the COVID-19 restrictions, and we will continue to work in that virtual environment and support people through that process throughout this year and into next, including bringing more jobs to Dundee.
Alison Johnson, followed by Alec Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you. The Cabinet Secretary said she'll consult early next year on the strategic direction for carers' assistance. So will the consultation include proposals to provide additional support for those who care for more than one person? And will the Scottish Government look into the possibility of scrapping the 20-metre rule for disability benefits, which has led to thousands of Scots losing their mobility component and motability vehicles?
Cabinet Secretary.
On the issue of the 20-metre rule, this is something which we are developing our policy work at the moment within government, and I will report on our deliberations on that in due course. It's something, again, which is under active consideration at this point. And the carers consultation that will come out will obviously look at a myriad of issues. Alison Johnson mentions one which is often brought up by carers when we look to see how carers allowance would develop, and I would be very surprised if that wasn't something that was again brought up during the next consultation process by stakeholders.
Alec Cole-Hamilton, followed by John Mason.
Thank you. The Prime Minister's views on devolution would appall most moderate and reasonable people. Liberal Democrats fought alongside the Government for a Scottish Parliament and for more powers for this chamber. We agreed on the Smith Commission and with it the creation of our own social security system. But that was 6 years ago. This is really important. The Minister states that this year...
I'd like to hear a question.
I'm coming to the question. 111 million pounds on social security, but its full extent, that spend will eventually be £4 billion. So is the Minister comfortable with the length of time this is taking, because neither the Scottish Government or the DWP have covered themselves in glory here?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, as I said during my statement, we were on track to deliver, for example, the child disability payment this year, and still on track to have delivered the adult disability payment early next year, had it not been for COVID. And I hope that Alec Cole-Hamilton can realise that the Scottish Government and the DWP will be impacting our timetables for that. But I would point out to him that the agency is delivering 9 benefits. 6 are indeed completely new, and the others are more generous than their DWP alternatives. And we will, of course, add to that by delivering the Scottish Child Payment by February next year. And I think that is a very good use of the powers that the Parliament has in social security to date.
John Mason, followed by Jeremy Balfour.
Thank you. I understand engagement with stakeholders and experience panels has been disrupted by COVID. But can the Cabinet Secretary assure us that the lived experience of people does remain central to the development of our social security system?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, this is a really important area because it's the feedback that we get from users and the experience panels that really will make this a very different system. And the fact that that did have to be stopped because obviously some of the experience panel members are amongst our most vulnerable in society was a real difficulty for the programme because we rely on that feedback to be able to move forward. That is now moving forward, although differently and virtually, but it is absolutely remaining at the heart of our work, despite it being in a different way. And I was very pleased, for example, to see recently feedback on our application form for adult disability payment, which has been heavily influenced by users and practitioners.
Jeremy Balfour, followed by Joan McAlpin.
We know the SNP are still relying on the UK Government to deliver a large part of its welfare programme. The SNP is paying the UK Government £400 million to retain delivery parts of the devolved benefit system. Even without the present crisis, the Government was always going to be delayed in regard to when these benefits were going to be devolved. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, when will the social security system in Scotland be fully up and running and not rely on the DWP to deliver disabled benefits?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, as I said during my statement, it is still our ambition and determination to complete this delivery by 2025, which is what I'd said in previous statements. This is a joint programme with the DWP. I would hope that everyone in the Chamber would recognise that we have all been impacted by COVID-19 and the implications on that, on the way that we work and how we've had to change the way that we've worked. But we are still determined to make use of the powers, do that wisely, safely and securely, and deliver the programme by 2025.
Joan McAlpine, followed by Mark Griffin.
Thank you. The Scottish Government has published a series of policy papers on the process for someone applying for disability benefits and how decisions are made. Can the Cabinet Secretary reassure the Chamber this kind of transparency will continue as decisions are made about the benefits, particularly as the Cabinet Secretary outlined that the Scottish Government is progressing policy work?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I was pleased to publish the paper that Joan McAlpine mentions, as they have set out the progress we have still been able to make, particularly over this difficult year, in designing the disability benefits that will make a real difference. And they cover the entire system from how people will apply right through to the decision and beyond. And the important point about the decision that were in the policy papers was it was very much based on that lived experience that John Mason also mentioned about, and of our stakeholders. And I hope both the experience panels and our stakeholders were able to look at those policy papers and see the real impact that they've had on the policy as we develop it as a government.
Mark Griffin, followed by Bob Doris.
Thank you, President Officer. I appreciate the answer the Cabinet Secretary has already given to Alison Johnson, but I wonder if the Cabinet Secretary can set out when she expects to update the Chamber and disabled people themselves about the 20-metre rule for mobility entitlement, since it's one that we are getting lobbied about non-stop.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I can assure Mark Griffin that I want to make this announcement to give reassurance to people as soon as I can. It is something I know which people have been concerned about for some time, and why we are determined to look to see what can be done. I've always said that would be in the parameters that we would need to keep adult disability payment along much of the same lines of what is done with the criteria of PIP, to ensure that we don't have two systems running at once. But I have stressed at the same time that you can run a system that makes fair and reasonable decisions for people that will be very different, even if much of the criteria remains the same. But in essence, on the 20-metre rule, we are looking very carefully at that criteria to see if any changes can be made within that safe and secure transition that we have as our main priority.
Bob Doris, followed by Graham Simpson.
Presiding Officer, what reassurances can the Cabinet Secretary provide that, despite the continuing impact of COVID-19, the work to make sure that disability benefits are up and running, with the first starting next year, will not be impacted further by COVID-19 or indeed by partners such as the DWP?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the timescales I've set out today have been subject to much discussion and deliberation, not just within the Scottish Government and the agency, but also with our partners, very much including the DWP. And we have the DWP's agreements that they can support the dates that I've announced. I can provide reassurance, I hope, that we will do everything we can to deliver to the timescales I've set out today. Of course, as members have heard from the First Minister, we are still very much in the grip of this pandemic, and so none of us can be certain about what happens next with COVID-19. If there are effects of the ongoing pandemic that impact on Scottish Government, Social Security Scotland, or indeed any of our partners to the extent that they would change the timetables, then I will, of course, update Parliament accordingly. But I am very hopeful that we will continue to make progress in controlling the virus, and that we'll be able to deliver disability assistance as I've set out in my statement.
Graham Simpson, followed by Tom Arthur.
The Cabinet Secretary says it's her ambition to roll out Scottish child payment by the end of 2022. How can we have any confidence that it will actually happen?
Cabinet Secretary.
Because I hope that the member and others, and particularly on the Conservative benches, will support me in my encouragement that I'm making to the DWP to give us the data that will allow us to be able to deliver it. Because the key aspect to delivering Scottish child payment for under 16s is the fact that we don't have the data for that at the moment. We need to be able to ensure that we get that data from the DWP. We're still waiting for the DWP to carry out a feasibility study to tell the Scottish Government about what we will need to do in terms of building any interface, for example, that will allow that to happen. And I look forward to working with Mr Simpson and other Conservatives as we both encourage the DWP to move forward with that, because I'm sure that's in the best interest of the children of Scotland.
Tom Arthur, followed by Sarah Boyack.
Can the Cabinet Secretary outline some of the thinking behind how decisions to prioritise certain benefits such as Job Start payment and Scottish Child payment were taken?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, we prioritise the Scottish Child payment because of the real impact that it will have to reduce child poverty in Scotland and help hard-pressed families affected by the pandemic. And I'm delighted that we have delivered that within 18 months of announcing it, and that speed is unprecedented in the UK. My decisions to deliver the child winter heating assistance and Job Start payment were pragmatic. They were, in effect, benefits that we could deliver quickly to make a difference to people within the resource constraints caused by the pandemic. The Job Start payment was obviously nearing readiness for launch at the start of the pandemic, so it was a clear choice, particularly given helping young people into work is key during this area, and child winter heating assistance is something that can be paid automatically and therefore could fit into the programme.
And Sarah Boyack.
Cabinet Secretary, given the range of support payments announced today and the fact that school grant clothing applications are available, what Scottish Government messaging will be delivered to help our constituents access financial support and debt advice, given that over 500,000 people now receive council tax support?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Sarah Boyack does raise a really important point, and that's that it is good to have benefits in place and payments in place, but it's not good enough, and they mean nothing if we don't actually tell people about them and ensure that that's a very easy process to be able to get the payments for. That's why, for example, the Scottish Government has ensured that marketing campaigns have went out during the COVID pandemic to encourage people to seek support and to look at what they are entitled to, which is why we continue to give support to, for example, Citizens Advice Scotland and others to be able to work on that, because the delivery of the benefits is one aspect of it, but we have not just a legal but a very important moral obligation to ensure that the benefit take-up is also exceptionally strong at all times, but never more so than during the pandemic.
Thank you. That concludes questions on the statement. I thank the Cabinet Secretary and members who managed to get through all the questions. I'm going to move straight on to the next item of business, which is a debate on motion 23370 in the name of Graham Day on Scottish Government support for the Veterans and Armed Forces community in Scotland 2020. Can I invite members who wish to speak in the debate to press the request to speak buttons now? I call on Graham Day to speak to and move the motion. Minister, please.